Hello everyone, how's it going? In this video, we're going to talk about Lucid trading under the ticker symbol LCID. It has been one of the most speculated stocks in the Nasdaq. Some have said that it could be the next Tesla, while others believe that it's just going to be a giant bubble about to burst. Lucid is one of the few companies that has an actual product rolled out. And as time went on, the stock price action, along with investors' hope, went through a lot of roller coasters, and some are still wondering if this is a bandwagon that they want to hop on. In this video, we're going to look at Lucid and to see if the stock still deserves to have a place in our portfolio. If you appreciate my content, please consider to drop a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Also, please check out the links down in the description section, as every help is greatly appreciated. So over the past couple of days, of course, we have seen tremendous amount of volatility for Lucid. And from just in the space of one day, the stock went up by 60%. And this is mainly because there were rumors around the fact that Lucid might be sold off to a wealth fund. And this has prompted people to imagine that, well, there could be a lot of premiums for Lucid. And in addition, a lot of people were shorting or were bearish about Lucid, so now they would have to redeem, which will form another wave of demand. So I wouldn't say that none of these were true, but I just would say that the reality is probably going to be more complex than what we wish it is. Nevertheless, if we look at the price action over the past few days, Lucid went from $14 down to around $11.32 before going back to $11.90. So my understanding is that yes, there's a bit of a pullback. Yes, people were trying to take profit from their previous positions, their previous purchases, but enough people have stayed and enough people continue to buy. And this is what explains the fact that, the stock has maintained itself above the $10 level, or even above the $11 level, and currently trying to reach the $12 level. I think that over the next few weeks, we're going to see more clearly what's going to happen between any sort of potential buyer and Lucid Group. In the meantime, this is going to be, an interesting period to observe what's going to happen with the volatilities, the speculations, and so on. I would say that fundamentally, Lucid is a strong company, but given that my entrance point is much higher than where it is right now, even if from a purely exposure perspective, it's less than 0.1% of my portfolio. So for me, I can afford to wait. But I would say that for people in my shoes, I would stick around till the end, right? If it goes through, then fine, I'll cash in the premiums, or I'll let the premium soften the scale of my losses in this relatively small position. If not, then I will probably add on my position from there, because I'm pretty sure that Lucid is not going to stay around $10 for an infinite amount of time. There will come a point where the business matures, the sector matures, and the big ones within the sector will be recognized for their fair value. So where their fair value might be located at is uncertain, but my impression is it's going to be around the $20 or the $30 eventually. Lucid Motors, also known as Lucid Group, is an EV manufacturer poised to shake up the industry with a cutting-edge technology and its sleek designs. It definitely stands out with its advanced battery technology, designs, and commitment for long-term sustainability. One of the key differentiators is the battery technology. Lucid Air has significantly longer range and faster charging time. Another reason might be where the company is or who created it where that actually matters. So previously, before Lucid became public, Many people were saying that the next Tesla might be NIO. However, due to regulatory and also distance issues, I would say that many people were worried that their investments may not have the best oversight. I'm not saying that SEC is perfect, but comparing to something that is right under their nose versus having to travel half the globe in order to find the operations and the market sales and so on, Lucid would present a more safer option compared to NIO. And this is what also prompted many people to focus their attention and, more importantly, their capital on Lucid. If we look at the long-term tendencies of Lucid price action, it's not hard to see that a bubble that gave so much hope back in 2020 now bursted. The market no longer wants to blindly follow the hype, because on one hand, it cannot persist on believing that the bull market, based on purely assumptions, can continue like this. On the other hand, it simply cannot afford to sustain this trend when so many obvious issues, like supply chain issues, doubts on flagship companies, doubts on demand, the end of subsidies in many key markets, the conflicts around the world, and higher interest rates attracting the capital, have been plaguing the financial system as well as the real fundamentals out there. The market has long predicted that there will be a bearish market after such a prolonged bull market, and that most stakeholders believe that it's going to be a rough patch for at least a couple of years. The market peaked twice in the past, and if the first peak was caused by pure hype, the second one was then triggered by the rollout of actual products. Lucid remains one of the more solid companies in the sector and has kept its investment value or potentials for the years to come. The main question in everyone's mind is when should they enter in the stock? The long grind to lower price levels is likely going to continue, or at least the tendency may be there. But when we look at where it might lead the stock to, sometimes they can go to surprising levels. For example, I personally don't consider that Hyliion, another EV truck manufacturer that has also made the headlines back in 2020, deserves the price that it has now. Nevertheless, the sell-off continued for years without an actual reason other than people have lost confidence and or trust and or patience with it. So the same thing could happen with many other players in the EV sector. There is no fundamental phenomenon or reasons to support those sell-offs, but at some point it also doesn't have to matter, because they simply have to believe that there will be no new money to pour in the EV sector for the shareholders to eventually lose hope and trust and patience. In terms of the financials, Lucid had a strong financial performance in 2022. The company reported revenues close to $200 million in Q3 of 2022, which is a significant increase from just above $200,000 in Q3 of 2021. That strong growth was driven mainly by the launch of Lucid Air, the company's first vehicle, which began deliveries in late 2021. Lucid Air is a luxury electric sedan well received by the consumers and also helped the company to establish its reputation as a major player in the sector. Currently, Lucid has a negative net income, caused by the fixed costs and other operating expenses that should be absorbed as the volume picks up. Overall, I would say that Lucid's financial figures paint a good picture about the company, but it's also demonstrating that Lucid is lacking a little bit of discipline in terms of cost control. Nevertheless, I would say that in the years to come, they would still focus on growth rather than cost control. Now, let's also talk about the shareholder composition of Lucid, because it is something that it's quite important to determine if the company is better for trading or investing. Lucid is currently held by institutional buyers for the most part, by more than 70% of the total volume. This would suggest that the price volatility may be lower than other stocks held mainly in the hands of retail traders. One key behavioral difference between institutional and retail traders is their horizon. Institutionals tend to have a longer term view, which focuses on the company's fundamentals and the years to come when it's not the decades to come. They're also less likely to just jump in and out of a share because they can afford to have the loss. The short interest of Lucid has been significant over the past few months. It means that more and more investors have been betting against the company's stock by short selling it. Short sellers borrow shares of the stock and then sell them in the market, hoping to buy them back later, profiting from the difference. As of the recent data, short interest in Lucid represents 7.5% of the company's total shares outstanding. This is a moderate level of short interest, but significant nonetheless. It is important to note that the short interest is not a guarantee for a short squeeze, but it's still a very important metric to monitor, because this can tell us what is the current sentiment or the vibe about a stock. It's also worth noting that short sellers very often have actual valid reasons for their bearish sentiment, and that a short squeeze, no matter how likely it seems to be on paper, may never happen. My overall conclusion regarding Lucid is to start buying the shares now and to profit from an eventual premium, or to use this as an opportunity to start entering in a stock that's strong anyway. I think that we are in a relatively low point in the economy, even though I would expect that like the worst case scenario would push the stock down to like minus 50% from where it is now. In other words, I do kind of sort of have predicted one of the scenarios possible to be that Lucid is going to go to $5. But if that were to happen, I think that Jay Powell's meme where he will pull out the printing machine and start, printing lots of money to the crowd, this is definitely going to occur, right? And for this reason, I think that eventually the future is going to look brighter. Right now, we are looking at a price point where the EV market has significantly cooled down, and the global capital market has simply moved from one type of asset to another. We haven't seen a significant sell-off market-wide just yet, because right now we are back to the 2019 level. And in 2019, we were expecting to have some sort of significant recession in 2020 and onwards. And that's before all the quarantines and all the stimulus and so on. So this is why I would say that now would be one of the decent points to start buying Lucid. But if you want to buy Lucid, it's better to do it while keeping in mind that our goal is to stay in for the long game. In other words, can you afford to wait 3 years, 5 years, even 10 years before the company finally blossoms? And also, what kind of exposure do you want to have? Personally, I would say that the maximum would be around 3 to 5%. I have previously mentioned that right now, my current exposure is like 0.025% of my portfolio. In other words, I still have a lot of room to go. And this is because I believe that the bottom will be reached within the next 3 years. Okay? And if that is the case, then I do plan to gradually add up to the stock within the next 3 years, assuming the buyout doesn't go through. Because obviously, if the buyout goes through, we don't have to worry about any of those.